Exits for position. Goes around the outside, it's in his team.
Qualified.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Barely Qualified, a Formula One podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Channing Apodaca. I don't know why I'm looking into your screen and not into the camera. I'm Channing Apodaca. My co-host, as always, Brandon Wood. How you doing, big guy?
I'm doing great. Just still trying to recover from this amazing weekend. So much to talk about. I just can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, this was a crazy one. So the Hungarian Grand Prix, this is the post-Hungarian Grand Prix episode. The track that shouldn't produce good races that always continues to do so because of chaos. Like, this is called sort of Monaco without the walls. And it is that. It's a difficult track to overtake at. It doesn't really produce like the best on-track action, but there's always some sort of drama going on here. Like, if you remember back to a couple years ago, Esteban Ocon wins in the rain. His teammate at the time, Fernando Alonso, defends like a motherfucker, gets him his first win. Last year, I forget what happened, but I know there was a little bit of drama on the track. Not like racing-wise, but just dramatics. And then this year, we have probably the most dramatic moment of the season, I think. And there's been a lot of crazy shit that's gone on this season, whether it was, Oscar and Lando coming together, whether it's Mercedes having a little bit of a resurgence, Lewis winning at his home race. This was, I think, some of the craziest shit we've ever seen. It was Oscar Piastri winning the race, his very first Grand Prix victory, and doing it by having his teammate take team orders and swapping positions back. Lando Norris, I'm not going to say giving up the win, but playing the team game. Awkward, stressful, irritating, and almost disrespectful radio calls I think I've heard in a long time. And it was over and over and over again. Brandon Wood, how did you feel about this moment between Oscar, Lando, and the McLaren team as a whole?
Well, there's so much to unpack here.
There's a lot.
Just the momentum that the team has had coming into this weekend has been huge. There's been probably the past 6-7 races. They've been in contention for the win, if not winning. And coming into this weekend specifically, looking through practice, like they were just completely on top of it. Had the pace in the car. Coming towards into qualifying, I was just saying to myself, I'm like, if they don't win this weekend, at least win this weekend, McLaren, someone's going to get fired on the pit wall, right? Somewhere someone's dropping the ball, and this is going to be, we're going to see some repercussions from it. So with them locking out 1-2 in qualifying, I was not surprised to see Lando on top. He had the better edge over Oscar all through the weekend, and then like he's done in the past, I know this is like 5 times now he's had pole.
It's his 5th time, yeah.
5th time he's had pole. Lando again gets beat off the start.
Yeah. So there was a stat that I heard. He started from pole position 5 times in his career, and every single time, all 5 times, he has not finished the first lap in first place. This is a bad recurring scenario for Lando that needs to get fixed, because had that not happened, he wins this race.
Yeah. So there it's been said that Oscar taking the lead in that first turn was what gave him the race win, right? Like he had that advantage towards the in that first stint, and he was the race was his.
Yeah, he had about a consistent 3-second lead on Lando. The gap closed and open and closed and open up until that first pit. But yeah, he did hold on to that position for a good amount of time. Before we move on from that, I want to talk about the start, because I do want to defend Lando a little bit here. Yes, we know that he has terrible off the line. He's got some kind of an issue that needs to be fixed. I don't know if it's directly his reaction time, if it's everything that comes after the reaction, if it's a gear shifting issue. I don't know what it is, but he's bad. All right. He was put in a little bit of a bad position at this start because he's got his teammate who's in equal machinery to his right. Equal machinery and better off the line. And then he's got Max Verstappen on his left, and he sort of gets sandwiched in between the two of them as he's trying to defend his teammate, loses a little bit of time on the straight, then tries to defend Max Verstappen, loses a little bit more time, ends up kind of getting pinched, sandwiched, loses out on the plays, eventually takes it back from Max Verstappen, eventually. But sort of like circumstantial. It wasn't just that he lost it on the line, and it's one of those tracks where second place has the inside line, and therefore I think the better position to be in anyways. So at a little bit of a disadvantage, Lando, but still, if he gets the launch that he needs, none of this even matters, right? Just a little bit of me defending the young man.
Yeah, and it's hard to say because I'm not, I'm a professional racing driver or anything, but it seems like, had he just stayed straight
Yeah.
and just made it a drag race towards the end, he probably would have had the corner.
I believe so.
But like we've seen a lot of times, he makes moves to try to cover off, and in this case, he ends up losing too much track position, and became the
you see that a lot.
The reason why.
I think the only time that that's going to work out is if you line up pointed in that direction so that you can at least get off in somewhat of a straight line. Like a direct cutoff instead of making the defensive move, because then you end up losing time, and you end up losing time to one of two cars in that scenario. You might defend Oscar for a split second, but then you've got then you've got Max on the other side. Now you've got to defend that, and you've completely lost a half a car lengths of track position. So it sucks. It's what happens, but let's break down what really happened. So Oscar overtakes Lando. They decide to go for a pit stop strategy that favors Lando Norris for whatever reason. I don't know why they chose to do this. They did this to cover off Lewis, and then with one driver, and then Max with another. They pitted Lando. He gets the fresher tires. He is able to undercut his teammate by about 2 seconds, and then from there, it became sort of like a little bit of an attrition. Oscar pits on the next lap. Lando ends up gapping him by like 6 seconds, so he's outpacing him, and that's where the drama really comes in, is that, yes, they did commit an undercut on him, but from there on out, Lando's pace was that of a winning race. Oscar wasn't able to catch up. I think had he done it, Lando maybe would have succeeded the position at an earlier point, but Lando is leaps and bounds ahead. Nearly 7 seconds at a certain point.
Yeah, and some of that, is because the team orders were for their tire management protocol was that in those first laps of that stint, is they were supposed to reserve a little bit of tire, where Lando didn't do that. Oscar did.
Yeah, he was eating curb like a motherfucker.
Right. So that gap was built up a little bit, not by and not because as much. It's not as much to do with Lando outpacing Oscar on like skill. It was more just he was using up more of the tire when the team was asking them not to, and Oscar was kind of sit back in a position where like, okay, like I'm just going to sit and trust that this is all going to get worked out. Because essentially what happened was, in an effort to protect against Lewis, they gave Lando the lead of the race, and trusting that they would swap positions back. Lando, being put in this position, was now tempted, right? Like, is this? Why would they do this? Why would they put me in this position to have to give up a win, potentially, challenging my place within drivers' championship?
Yeah.
If they didn't want me to lead the race, then why did they give it to me?
Yeah.
And this is where a lot of the controversy stems from, right? Where it's like, McLaren probably didn't need to do this way, but because they did it this way, they were super, super protective over that 1 and 2 lockout, right? Like they really, really wanted to protect against Lewis being able to undercut them. They wanted to avoid any issues in the pit stop, say an extra couple seconds with a stuck tire or something like that. They would have lost out on that position. So they gave themselves that extra few seconds gap, to protect that for position. But in doing so, right, they put Oscar at a disadvantage, and they wanted to make it right with Oscar, right? So it's just a really tough situation. It was asked of Andrea Stella, like, why, because we heard a lot of pleading between Lando's engineer and Lando, and him saying, well, what,
it was
kinda pushing back
awkward.
on
It was awkward,
So
and it
awkward.
was so blatant, and it went on so long.
Yeah, and so there was questions like, well, why didn't Andrea Stella come in on the radio and step in and say, hey, you know, this is what needs to happen, And
Hmm.
he said, I through the whole thing, I trusted Lando 100%. I know who Lando is as a person. I was not worried that he was going to go against the team or the team's wishes. So he just kind of let that play it out. And I thought that was kind of respectable. But
Hmm.
at the same time, in that same, I don't know if it's the same exact interview, but after the race, Nico Rosberg was interviewing Andrea Stella and he gave a little bit of advice, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said, uh, in those types of moments, instead of saying, hey, Lando, at your earliest convenience, we need you to let Oscar by. You need to be like, Lando, this is what's happening. We're swapping the cars and just leave it at that. Take all room out of the decision making. Like, don't leave it up to the drivers, basically, right?
Yeah.
Because then you create these weird tensions between Oscar, between Lando, you know, uh, especially in a circumstance like this where there is no declared hierarchy within the team, right? Like both drivers are quote unquote treated equally. So, Nico giving that little bit of advice, especially because it's, he's been in this situation before. Him and Lewis at this very same racetrack had an incident in 2014. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting to see how this unfolds. My one question to you is, what do you think would have happened had Lando not given up the place?
In terms of like reprimand from the team, I don't know. I have no idea because I know how much Zach Brown favors Lando. And Zach Brown is head honcho there. He's above Andrea Stella. Like Andrea Stella might have had some backlash himself, but I think Zach Brown in the end would have backed Lando and would have liked to see that dog in Lando a little bit. You know what I mean? That little bit of Max Verstappen, that little bit of Sebastian Vettel, multi 21 dramatics right there. But I think it would have caused too much of a controversy between Oscar and Lando themselves. And, his engineer kind of laid it out like probably more blatantly than he needed to do on team radio by being like, you need the team to win a world championship. You're going to need Oscar. You have to do this. Please, I'm begging you. This is for your own protection. That was the line that he said that kind of like made it awkward. Like they were going to have some sort of like, backlash within the team itself if Lando did this when he was saying, trust me, I'm protecting you. It was like, there were so many awkward, like way too insightful things that they were saying on that team radio. It was awkward.
Which to me is interesting, right? Because although we hear after the race that Andrea Stella and the team were very confident that Lando was going to do this. When you hear that, it's like, well, your radio messages didn't give us the message that you were confident that he was going to do it.
You seemed like you were
at
really
one point
worried.
basically pleading, right? So
Lando kind of. He said, like, I always knew I was going to give it back. I was just waiting to the very last moment. I think he was trying to prove a point when he was going all out. I think he was trying to prove the point that, A, they didn't need to save those tires. Like, yes, that is a high deg track. Even the hards were wearing out at an early point and, with the heat and everything. But I think he was trying to prove a point that he knows how to manage his tires, even under, putting the tires under pressure and the tires under a high deg track situation. And that their car is capable of doing that. So, like, if they wanted to go racing those two cars, they could have. And Lando also, I think he was putting in that little bit of extra effort to prove that he's number one. He's number one at that team. He's in second place in the world championship, and every point does matter. I think this race is going to be one of the most important points of the season with how, excuse me, how the McLaren season's going, how Lando Norris' season is going, and then the trajectory downward that Red Bull Racing and Max Verstappen's season is going, because they have finished, not outside the points, but in the lower section of the points. Max finished, 5th? So that gets him beneath 10 points. I think it gets him like 7 points or something for this race. Lando could have banked an extra 7 in this one. So if your 2 DNFs for Max Verstappen or Max out of the points 2 times from Lando being completely in this hunt. Lando wins 2 races and Max DNFs. That's a plus 50 positive in the differential in points. Like, they're right fucking there. And if this comes down to Lando losing the world championship within 7 points, this race is going to stand out like a red flag that the team didn't do the right thing for the one driver that they have who's actually in contention for getting them a world championship. Like, let's be honest, Oscar's out of the running.
Yeah, well, a couple things. After the race, Lando had said, thinking back, he's like, towards the end of the race, I was thinking about Oscar's position and all that, and if what I would want to happen if I was in his position, and that was part of the reason why uh, Lando did let him by, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't actually concede, because and I think because of that and because of that respect that he gave to Oscar and the team, that I think that this is only gonna pay give him more advantage later. He's gonna get repaid
Yeah, it's gonna
back
pay back
and
in
then some
dividends,
throughout the rest of the season, I think.
especially
There's gonna be
the farther the season goes on and when things really get more important. Every win, every point, every race is going to have a higher importance as the season goes on. So he's going to get repaid. So it's good. I do think, like I said, that, this could be a more important race, and maybe they would have wanted to start that Lando charge a little earlier, maybe here at the Hungarian Grand Prix. But I do think that's going to come into play later. The reason it's so important is because, like I said, like you can see a downward trajectory with Max Verstappen. You can see a downward trajectory with the Red Bull Racing team as a whole. The team, both drivers, like they're a little bit in shambles right now, and they've already replaced Max Verstappen's power unit once, if not twice this season, I do believe. So he's going to take an engine penalty, which means he's going to start at the back of the pack to begin with. So like there's one race where he's going to either potentially, if they continue like on a downward slope this bad, not make it into the points, or, be in the low points. So, like, you've already got an advantage happening here. So, every point matters. All I'm saying, Oscar, is
yeah.
Oscar, do the right thing. I know that you will, Oscar. I know you'll do the right thing. You need your teammate to win his world championship. I don't know.
Exactly. Well, now's a great time to transition to Red Bull and Max's weekend. We're not unfamiliar with seeing Max get spicy and angry on the radio, but this weekend hit an all-time high
Yeah, it was
of
bad.
just Max just bordering on temper tantrum slash spiraling out of control as his race unfolded, and ends up losing one, if not more, places at the end of the race due to his aggressive behavior. Yeah, so I mean, coming into the weekend, Red Bull had a big upgrade package. Uh, Through the practice sessions, it basically looked like it didn't work.
Yeah, he was
They
saying that the car it doesn't turn. He really is struggling with the turns, and you've seen it because he's gone off track multiple times. He went off track at the beginning of the race. He tried to overtake Lewis into one of the corners. He made a really late lunge, couldn't keep it on track, goes off. Lewis takes the position back. A lap or two later, he ends up putting his wheel underneath Lewis's wheel and got sent flying Rocket League style.
Yeah, I mean, Red Bull faltered a couple times here throughout the weekend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like not only did their upgrade package didn't work out, uh, you know, Checo had his issues in qualifying, ends up going out in the first part, ends up starting in the back of the grid. So he's nowhere in there to help Max with his fight, of course.
As
And
is tradition now.
yeah, so going into the race, they didn't have as much pace as they would have liked, and they ended up lacking a little bit on their strategy. Right, they were allowed to get undercut twice, once
Mm-hmm.
by Lewis, and then once by Charles Leclerc, and
Sean Leclerc.
Sean Leclerc, and so as these things start stacking up, Max is just getting more and more irritated, and then his engineer, GP Gianpiero Lambisi, is starting to push back a little bit. He gives him when Max comes out on the medium tires. I think it was the second stop, and he's going. That was quite an introduction to the tires, Max, and then he just fires off on him. He's like, "You guys screwed me with the strategy," and blah blah blah. He's just it sucks to see, and especially when it's I mean, well, I don't know. Maybe this is good to see, like because
Yeah,
we
I
want
mean,
to see Max,
It's
falter
very
a little bit,
interesting, yeah, because we've seen this guy who's been robotically perfect for the better part of 3 years. And now we're starting to literally see things unravel when they aren't going right, when he's struggling with the car, and he's still putting in great performances. Outside of making contact with Lewis, he was probably on for a podium this weekend in a car that he was struggling to drive. But I think the pressure, the having to do it alone, maybe staying up too late, some people are saying is it's
Oh yeah,
starting.
yeah.
You're starting to see him falter a little bit, and it's interesting, and it makes for a very exciting world championship.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with someone like Max who's operating a level that's so high, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're not operating at that level, he's going to point it out real fast. So there's been a lot of complaints from him about the team. He hasn't shied away from saying what he feels and all of the, his post race media uh he's doing and stuff like that. So he's been not happy with the direction of the car. He feels like they're not quite listening to him. It's probably also some of it just they're in a little bit of they've hit the ceiling a little bit maybe with their design and they're trying things now to try to get themselves out of that when and there's not a lot of room right now to play with. So it's just it's not going well for Red Bull and their pace. And when Max gets into these situations, he just cannot accept
Yeah.
not winning. So he's going
Yeah.
to do whatever he can. He's going to send it up the inside on Lewis when he really shouldn't, and he's going to end up, he really lucked out that he kept it on track this weekend, and that he didn't DNF.
Yeah, he's lucky that he
Uh,
didn't, crack that suspension or, put a crack in the floorboard of that car because it hit very hard. He was able to spin it around and get right back on track. Also, he's lucky that he didn't get a post-race penalty, I thought, because that was a pretty egregious, like you do something on track, you're going to get 5 places in the next race. We've seen that a couple times this season. Esteban Ocon, I think, got one. Somebody else might have gotten one. Anyway, but yeah, you're starting to see him fall apart a little bit. And we have to also talk about his teammate who has already fallen apart. He's completely gone to fucking vacation, something. But I think this could have been one of the most important races of the season for Checo. They had all the Red Bull higher-ups, not just from Red Bull Racing, but from Red Bull, the company, and he needed to show out and have a good race. This is a track that he should be doing good at. It's, a smaller track like he usually, aside from this year, does fairly well at Monaco. And this is a comparable track, so you would think that he did well here. And in the first qualifying session, he put it in the fucking gravel and wasn't able to get out. Literal worst-case scenario for a guy whose job is potentially on the line. Starts it in P15 and does a miraculous recovery drive. Who knows how much of a savior that's going to be, but he finishes in P7. So good drive from him, but again, it's the fact that you're putting yourself in a position to have to make a recovery drive. I think we have potentially seen the second to last race in Sergio Perez's Red Bull racing career. I think after Belgium, when we hit the summer break, we're going to see one of Liam Lawson or Yuki Tsunoda. Maybe Daniel Ricciardo, I hope not, but one of those 3 guys is going to fill that Red Bull Racing seat, and Sergio Perez is going to get shelved.
yeah, I mean that's the tough thing is like his race on Sunday was actually pretty good.
It was
right?
great.
Like
As far as the race
moving up to the
goes.
pack on such a hard track to do
Yeah.
so. Played to manage the tires great. Like, but it was all for nothing or not nothing. They did get
Couple
some
points.
points, but there's this asterisk on it, right? Because of a terrible qualifying performance. And we've seen a lot of this where Sergio, when it matters a whole lot in qualifying, he's not able to put it together. So it's frustrating how quickly he's out. It's hard to say. I think at this point, anything's possible. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's still here through the rest of the season. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. So
I
I'm sorry,
think
Sergio.
I think it would be detrimental to their season for Red Bull Racing to keep Sergio Perez on the team at this point. It's just not getting better, and it's a liability, and you have a real world chance that McLaren is going to overtake you in the Constructors' Championship where the money matters. It's got to go, and that hurts.
So there's been some rumors coming out about Red Bull lineup for next year. Potentially, what I've heard, Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda,
Okay.
Red Bull, Liam Lawson, and Isaac Hadjar at Cash App Red Bull for the junior team. So
Wow.
to me, this is like this is great. This is like what they should be doing. Like Yuki's had his little run in the junior team. If you guys really you want to give him a chance, like this is a great opportunity. He has the momentum. Um, put him in there for a year or two and see what he's able to accomplish, right? Like let's have it. And then going back down to Cash App, like let's see Lawson in the car. He definitely deserves it. He had a great showing in 23.
Absolutely.
When he had his little sit in the car. And then Isaac Hadjar has been in the Red Bull program for a while. Good driver. He hasn't had the greatest like practice sessions when he's been in. I think he still has a little bit of ways to go as far as like I don't know if he's gonna be like Lawson was, like jumping right into the car and being able to like deliver results, but I think he has a good ceiling, a pretty high ceiling. So I
Mhm.
think he could be a good junior driver for them. So
I imagine he's also had
yeah,
a lot less time in the sim than Liam Lawson has had. Liam Lawson being the Red Bull reserve driver for a little bit now. Um,
true. Yeah.
but yeah, I could see that scenario playing out 100%. I'm also not convinced that it goes to Yuki Tsunoda. I'm almost more convinced that Liam Lawson gets it just based on the few performances that he's had and the way that he handled himself in those performances. And the fact that anytime Yuki starts to do well, you also see him sort of fall back into his old Yuki, you know, not watching his attitude, his composure, his results on track are a little bit up and down, and I don't know if they want to trust him with that sort of responsibility yet. And Yuki might forever be a second tier
I
driver
don't
to
know. I
them.
feel like he's been pretty solid this year. I mean, aside from like the first race of the year where they had the whole thing with
With
Ricardo
Daniel,
where they
yeah.
swapped places, he hasn't really had any flare ups. Really, I mean, there's been a couple. I think maybe a couple races where he had a mistake and didn't finish well or something. But I mean, he's been in the points like 7 times
I'm not saying he's
in
had
the
a bad
past.
year. I'm
So,
saying that I just don't know if they see him as trustworthy yet. I think they hold Liam Lawson in a higher
but
light.
that's the thing is like if you guys don't seem as trustworthy now
Then what
after
are
all
you
this
doing
time,
holding him?
like you gotta just get rid of him or throw him in the car, you know what I'm saying? That's where I'm
Yeah.
at. It's like,
You got to
now's the
let him
time to throw
go.
him in. Exactly, like, let him at least try or set him free, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I mean, there's still also the Carlos Sainz factor. I could see Red Bull honestly putting Carlos in that car for one season.
yeah, it's always an option.
Also, big rumors that he's going to sign that Mercedes contract. I'm hearing more and more about that. I don't fucking know what's going to happen there, but and you know what? Honestly, if that is still on the table, that's the best move for Mercedes to do than to put
Have
Kimi
you heard
Antonelli.
have you heard the thing about, Toto parking his car in Max's spot?
No,
So apparently at the races, the past few races, Toto has been having them park like their like whatever his car is or whatever transport vehicle they're using for it. They're having him park in Max's spot
why to force
so
Max to
that
have to go talk to him?
yes, because he's like not he's Max has been like avoiding him and all that.
I mean, it sounds like they're courting him really hard, but Max has that
Uh,
clause.
but it seems like it's like why go through all the trouble if it's Max is avoiding you? Like
He
I don't
obviously
know, it's
doesn't want
just
to go there. Yeah, but there's a
stupid.
clause. So
Yeah.
they announced that they locked up Helmut Marko for throughout. I think 2026. He's going to be staying there, and the only way Max can get out of his clause is if Helmut Marko leaves. So he's going to be there for at least 2 more years.
Well, good for Helmet, I guess.
Yeah. What else do we need to talk about?
I mean, I think it's a good time to get into our props and flops, maybe.
Okay. I feel like there was one other
Uh,
thing I wanted to go over from this race, and I don't remember what it was.
we got the Fernando Alonso situation.
His little his tantrum at the end.
Yeah, I mean, are you aware?
Yeah, you sent me that thing today that so the team swapped the cars to let Oscar go after or Oscar to let Lance go after Yuki, right?
Hmm.
And Lance wasn't able to pass Yuki, and so they were supposed to give the position back to Fernando, and Lance didn't give it up, so he threw a fit.
Yeah, I mean, understandable. I mean, there was
for 1 point.
I don't know if you saw at one point there was a huge train of cars behind Fernando Alonso because he was trying to create that gap for Stroll to be able to do that. So I don't know what was going on there, but obviously Fernando not happy with where the car is at, not happy with how the strategy's been played, not happy with not getting the respect he feels he deserves,
Mhm.
and Stroll not giving the place back. So I don't know. I feel like
They've really
we've
fallen off
seen,
a cliff over there, man.
yeah, and with Fernando's nature or history with teams and his displeasure, usually when things start to go south, they really go south. So I
And
don't know. I don't
he
know. I don't
he
know how
walks.
2025 is gonna. I mean, it's already been announced that he resigned, right, or something like that.
I forget. I think so.
So
But
I,
that dude
I
is
don't
dude,
know.
he's a virus. He walks into a place, he plants his germs, and then he leaves. He leaves the team in worse condition than when he got there.
When he came,
Yeah, every single time. It's hilarious.
I don't know. It's hard to say what exactly that's all about, but obviously they're struggling and it's not going well. So,
Yeah.
but I do want to say complete disaster for Alpines again. I mean, I don't really know what to say right now. I mean, that's two races in a row. Pierre has to DNF due to an issue.
Yeah, dude,
Um,
two DNFs in as many races for what seemed like a similar issue both times.
it
One
was a
was like a water
gearbox
pump.
in Silverstone, and then this weekend it was a hydraulic leak or something like that.
I
So
thought Silverstone was a water pump or something in his car. I didn't know it was his
mm,
gearbox. I could be wrong. I
I
probably
don't know.
am.
So not going well for them. Um, just petering on out as we get into the summer break here. Alex Albon, super pissed at his team due to their strategy. He came into the race planning to do a two stop uh, or a three stop. I'm sorry, and so very aggressive strategy. Start of all his second stint, he ended up using a lot of his tire, and then it wasn't until like halfway through, uh, you know, or not halfway through, but in the process of him using a bunch of tire, the team says, "Hey, actually, we want to try to extend this and do a two stop." And
So
he's
now he's
just
just
like,
on this giant degraded tire.
I'm already locked into this, you guys.
Yeah.
So this is just, I think they could have had points, or at least been fighting a little bit closer to the points, and that really screwed them. So
Let's see.
not
Where did he
good
even
for
finish?
Williams this weekend.
Yeah, he finished in 14th.
So
One
yeah.
lap
So
up.
you got any flops for you?
Bu- 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 bu. It's hard to flop Sergio Perez when I want to, but when you make a recovery drive that good, I want to flop him for fucking binning it again in quali. But I'm gonna flop Red Bull as a whole, with Max Verstappen, his meltdown, his on-track antics, the radio calls, the I don't want to call it whining, but the clashing between the driver and the team, and then kind of just having a bad weekend overall. One driver in the runoff and quali, one driver losing his shit on track, and just being bested by two of your biggest rival teams. I'm gonna flop Red Bull.
My props, I think.
You can do your
Oh
prop or your
man,
flop.
I just already just did my flops, man.
Oh, you flopped Alex and Williams.
No, Williams and Alpine, but
Oh,
my props got to go to Lewis Hamilton. I mean,
yeah,
they they took a very aggressive undercut strategies. Put him in a tough situation there at the end. He had a hard tire that was on the last legs, and he had a fight there with Max for quite a while. I mean, Max kind of undid it himself. Had he not been as aggressive as he was, I think he probably could have got Lewis eventually.
yeah. He had the
But
pace.
that's the way the dice roll. So Lewis, good on you. Keeping the podium.
His
I
200th.
guess it's a little streak. He got a 200th podium, and he's got a little streak going now, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he got the win last weekend. So especially when his teammate George is not really in the mix this weekend, holding it down for the team, and making everybody proud.
Yeah,
So,
Lewis actually, going into those corners before him and Max Verstappen touched, he was defending really, really well against him. And you could probably argue the fact that his defensive maneuvers I talk like Joe Biden, forced Max to make the mistake that he did, in running off the track. So great race from Lewis, his 200th career podium. Definitely a good prop. I'm going to do the obvious one. I'm going to prop Oscar Piastri on his first Grand Prix victory. A dream come true for the young kid. Definitely a deserving drive. He put in a great performance. And then I have to side prop his teammate Lando Norris for being a good teammate, doing the right thing, and also displaying that he does have that championship-winning fight in him and not wanting to give up the position, even though he ultimately did do the right thing on track. Did you see the moment in the cooldown room between Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, and what did you make of that? What did you make of Lewis's comments and then Lando's response? Because I think there was a little bit of a miscommunication.
yeah.
So first off, before we break it down, what did you make of it?
My whole take was just that Lando was still hot about the whole situation and was just a little. I mean, I don't know what he heard Lewis say, but he when he gets into the room, first thing he does is he takes the second place Pirelli cap and he throws it on the ground. And then Lewis says, man, you guys are fast. And he goes, well, you guys were fast 7 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
what does that have to do with anything? It's
So
like,
here's what I think. I think Lando thinks that Lewis saw him throw the hat on the ground, right? And then he goes, you guys had a fast car.
Mhm.
And I think he took that as like, why did you do what you did when you had a fast car? Like you deserve to win the race. Why did you give up your position?
yeah.
And then Lando turns around and be like, well, you did, something similar 7 years ago when you had a fast car. Like you were in the same position. I think that's how he took it.
Yeah. It was just very weird. You could tell it was just like Lando was not really like in his right mind when he made that. You can tell
Yeah.
he's just angry and frustrated.
was-
and he's just like,
He had a little bit of selective
yeah.
hearing, I think.
yeah, and it was just kind of it was just very strange. And Lewis handled it well. He was kind of like, well, I was just trying to give you guys a compliment. I don't know.
I saw a lot of people on Twitter getting pissed off at Lando, being like, this little disrespectful prick, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, dude, what do you expect? The guy just, like, he's fucking heated. He's coming into a room that's literally called the cool down room for a reason. He needs to cool down. And he's not in the right headspace. He's probably got a million thoughts and a million different outcomes running through his head, wondering if he made the right decision, probably feeling slighted, feeling like maybe he didn't make the right decision, and now he's wondering what that outlook looks like publicly. Am I a bitch for giving this back? Would Max Verstappen have done that? Would Sebastian Vettel have done the same thing? Did I just make a career-killing move? Then he hears something and he goes, "Oh, fuck you, 7 years ago, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah, he was just not having it.
Yeah.
It's understandable. So
I think anybody trying to, say negative things about Lando in that situation, just shut up. Like, Lewis handled it very well. He summed it up. Lando just needed to relax, cool down. He picks the hat up eventually, puts it on. But, like, we've seen those situations before. We've seen Nico and Lewis do the hat tossing amongst each other. It's all gravy. It's going to blow over. Don't go calling for somebody's head or saying that somebody's a disrespectful child.
yeah, I don't know, but I think
Excuse me.
I think this sets the stage. I think Belgium's gonna be a good one. Just the whole second half this year, I think is gonna be it's anybody's game.
It's gonna be great.
If, like you said, a few Red Bull DNFs, Max playing that game of not wanting to accept second place, I think could end up biting him a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think given this little run here, I think the fight's on.
Now we've got Oscar Piastri in a position to play the teammate role, So it's going to be 2v1. If Oscar Piastri can do to Max Verstappen what Sergio Perez did to Lewis Hamilton in 2021 and, throw water on his fire every chance he gets, that's really going to hurt for Max. It's going to boost Lando, and who knows, but I'm excited for it.
Let's go.
Let's do it. All right, guys, this has been the Hungarian Grand Prix. I almost forgot which one it was. The Hungarian Grand Prix post-race edition. We will see you guys after the Belgian Grand Prix. Peace.
Peace.